I came to conquer. But the first thing I learned was how to hold a wrench. Her ship pierced the atmosphere like a silver spear of judgment, flames licking at its flanks as gravity clawed it downward. From orbit, the Earth looked small, defenseless, a ripe blue jewel begging to be claimed. Zelvaria, supreme sovereign of the Krolonian Empire, stood at the heart of her command vessel, cloaked in living armor that shimmered like the night sky itself. Her eyes burned with imperial fire. Her lips curled in the smirk of one who knew the universe would kneel. And then, it all went to hell. The warning sirens blared in a tongue older than Earth's pyramids. The hull trembled. Her AI, known only as directive, screeched about an ancient planetary defense system reactivating. The humans had awoken something. A satellite? A kinetic net? It didn't matter. One moment she was watching clouds swirl like cotton beneath her, the next, her ship was spiraling, exploding, dying around her. She ejected. Silence. Then pain. Then impact. When she opened her eyes, the sky above was red not with fire, but with rust. A crimson haze hung over a graveyard of twisted metal and scorched rubber. The scent of burning plastic, oil, and ozone thickened the air. She'd landed in some sort of industrial dump. Scrapville. The name didn't matter to her then. Nothing did, not even her own. Her memories were scattered, submerged beneath the trauma of re-entry and the blast wave. Names, titles, conquests all gone, or at least buried. But instinct endured. She knew she was important. She knew power flowed through her. And she knew, with some strange certainty, that someone nearby held command over this primitive mudball. She staggered to her feet, armor flickering with residual energy. A faint ping echoed inside her mind. The AI, fractured but functional, reached out for local control signals, anything to latch onto. And it found one, a nearby wireless frequency, beaming a signal with surprising strength and persistence. The AI processed it. Translated. Assessed. Labeled the source, Central Command Authority. Human. Location, 14.3 meters. She turned. And saw him. A man knee-deep in garbage. Grimy, shirt half-tucked, oil stains across his jeans. He held a bent wrench in one hand and a half-eaten burrito in the other. His name, though she didn't yet know it, was Eddie Malone. Occupation, plumber. Destiny, cosmic mistake. Zelvaria dropped to one knee. Your Majesty, she said, voice echoing with reverence and static, I await your command. Eddie blinked. Took a bite of his burrito. Then scratched his head. Lady, you okay? She bowed lower. Do not feign modesty, Supreme One. Your signal is undeniable. You command the networks. The data bends to your will. He looked around. What, my Wi-Fi? Her head lifted slightly. Yes. The WFAI. A sacred pulse of authority. A pause. Right, he said slowly. Okay, you're definitely not from around here? Zelvaria rose with grace forged in 1,000 battles. Her armor pulsed with faint light, and a small, floating drone that had survived the crash buzzed to life beside her. It scanned Eddie. Its fractured logic systems cross-referenced Plumber tools with Krolonian military tech. Result, alignment confirmed. He bore the marks of utility. The hands of function. The tool wielder. It chirped approvingly. Confirmed, Omega Authority entity? Eddie stepped back. Did that toaster just talk? You have allies, she said. Loyal and efficient. Your war form is modest, but no less formidable. He looked down at himself. This is a tank top, not a war form. Then, with the serenity of a queen offering herself to her king, she knelt again and held out a glowing sigil torn from her ship's core. I pledge myself, she said. Body, power, and code. Until your enemies lie crushed beneath your plumbing empire. Eddie stared at the sigil. And dropped his burrito. High above them, in the silence of Earth's exosphere, the remnants of her ship continued to burn. But from that wreckage, a signal pulsed into the void calling home. To the stars. To war. Back in Scrapville, Eddie bent down and cautiously picked up the weird, glowing badge. Okay, he muttered. Either I just got engaged to a cosplaying lunatic, or I'm about to have the weirdest Tuesday of my life. Eddie Malone lived alone in a house that looked like it had given up on being a house years ago. The porch sagged, the gutters wept rust, and the mailbox was just a coffee can duct taped to a bent pole. Inside, the decor could best be described as post-apocalyptic bachelor pad. Tools cluttered every surface. There was a couch, but it was more stained than fabric. And in the middle of it all stood Eddie, holding a plunger like a weapon as he regarded the armored alien woman who had followed him home. Zelvaria stood with perfect posture, scanning the room like a general assessing a battlefield. This, she declared solemnly, pointing to the sagging couch, must be your throne. Eddie blinked. That's a sofa. It smells like Doritos and regret. She turned to him with admiration in her golden eyes. So humble, Supreme Omega. Even your seat of power is disguised. Brilliant. He sighed and walked to the fridge. You hungry? I think I have. He opened the door. A blast of odor hit him like a punch. Bingo. One slice of pizza from a week ago and a jar of pickles that might be older than me. Zelvaria approached reverently, peering into the fridge. A chamber of preserved delicacies, exquisite. Eddie handed her the pizza, half expecting her to vaporize it. Instead, she sniffed it, frowned, then took a bite. Her eyes widened. It's revolting, yet strangely addictive. Welcome to Earth, Eddie muttered. Over the next hour, Eddie tried to figure out what to do with his unexpected house guest. He asked her questions: where she came from, what she wanted, what exactly made her think he ruled the planet, but her answers were vague, grandiose, and occasionally in Latin. Or something that sounded like it. You crash-landed. Maybe got hit on the head, he offered gently. Maybe you're confused. She stared at him. I am never confused. I merely recalibrate. Uh-huh. And you recalibrated straight into a junkyard. They sat in awkward silence until a loud gurgle came from the bathroom. Eddie stiffened. Aw crap. Not again. Zelvaria rose immediately. What threat presents itself? It's the toilet. It's temperamental. He rushed in and found the bowl bubbling ominously. I told you not to mock me, he muttered at it. Then, as he reached for the flush handle, it exploded in a geyser of water and questionable substances. Zelvaria stepped forward, eyes glowing. She raised a hand. Sparks danced from her fingertips. With a single pulse of energy, she struck the tank, sending a jolt through the ceramic. The eruption stopped. Eddie stood dripping. You fixed it. She nodded. The enemy has been neutralized. He stared at her, water running down his face. Then he started laughing. He couldn't help it. You just declared war on my toilet. And won. That night, Eddie laid out a mattress for her on the living room floor. She examined it like it might bite her. This is your second throne. That's a futon. You sleep on it. She looked confused. Sleep. You do sleep, right? She paused. Yes. Occasionally. During solar cycles. In nutrient chambers. Right. This one has springs. You'll love it. She sat stiffly, legs crossed, still wearing her glowing armor. Eddie turned to go to his room, then hesitated. You got a name? She tilted her head. Designation, Zelvaria. Wielder of the Crown Flame. High Regent of Krolonian Order. That's a lot. Mind if I call you V? She blinked. That is acceptable. He nodded. Okay then, V. Get some rest. We'll figure this out tomorrow. In the dark, as Eddie snored lightly from the next room, Zelvaria sat unmoving, eyes open, scanning the ceiling. Her mind was a haze of fragmented data and instinct. She didn't know where she was. She didn't know why she trusted this strange human. But something about him felt aligned. As if fate had chosen him. And somewhere deep in the stars, the signal from her crashed ship pulsed again, faint but steady. The universe had heard her fall. And it was starting to answer. By the third day, things in Scrapville had started to feel strange. Eddie noticed it when he went out to buy milk. Mrs. Dobbins, who usually glared at him like he'd murdered her cat in a past life, suddenly offered him a pie. A whole pie. Apple. Homemade. With cinnamon. "It's for your guest," she said, eyes darting behind him like she expected a UFO to rise out of his pickup truck. At the gas station, 3 teenagers were waiting by the pump. "Yo," one of them said, eyes wide. "Is it true? You're, like, dating an alien queen?" Eddie stared. "What? No. She's just look, she thinks I'm her boss. That's it." "Sick," the teen whispered reverently. "Alien simp culture. Respect." Eddie drove home in silence, pie on the passenger seat, brain spinning. Meanwhile, Zelvaria had declared war on his neighborhood. Not out of malice. She simply assumed leadership was expected of her. After all, she was the High Regent of an empire spanning 12 systems. How could she not govern this pitiful settlement? Using parts salvaged from her crashed vessel, V had repaired her drone, now a floating metal ball named KR-7, and programmed it for civic enforcement. Which, in Krolonian terms, meant low-altitude intimidation patrols. The results were immediate. One neighbor stopped mowing his lawn permanently after the drone hovered over his head and threatened to restructure his auditory canal. Another abandoned a barbecue mid-sizzle when KR-7 confiscated a bag of marshmallows, citing violation of Galactic Nutrient Code 44C. V also created new town laws. Handwritten. In black marker. Taped to the community bulletin board outside the post office. Rules for a stable human territory. No unauthorized gatherings over 3 persons, risk of rebellion. Cease all idle chattering in public zones. Respect the Plumber King. All cats are to be addressed as first sentinels. Eddie came home to find V standing triumphantly over a map of Scrapville drawn on cardboard, placing red thumbtacks like a general. "We have achieved partial compliance," she declared. "You threatened Mr. Jenkins with a drone, V. He's 90. He thought it was the Grim Reaper. He littered." Eddie sighed and rubbed his eyes. "Okay, no more drones. No more rules. This isn't your empire. It's a mess. But it's our mess. Got it?" V looked genuinely confused. "You do not wish to assert dominance over your domain? I wish to fix toilets and be left alone. That's all." KR-7 hovered silently, recording everything. That night, Eddie found her in the garage, hunched over a console of blinking alien tech wired into his TV. "What are you doing now?" "Attempting to re-establish high-orbit communication. Using your entertainment node." Eddie blinked. "You mean, my Roku?" "Yes. Your device labeled streaming dongle has excellent signal penetration. I have rerouted its frequency to amplify my distress beacon." He stared at the screen. It showed a frozen frame from a cooking show. "So, you're watching Bake Wars while calling an alien armada?" "Correct." "Great." What Eddie didn't know, what V didn't know either, was that the beacon had worked. Orbiting high above Earth, a dormant Krolonian satellite flickered to life. Old coding stirred. Deep space signals echoed through subspace. Far away, across the void, something heard her cry for aid. And started to move. Back on Earth, V scrolled past cooking videos while uploading bursts of code. She paused occasionally to admire the culinary feats on screen. This one uses fire to brown sugar, primitive, yet delightful. Eddie gave up and went to bed. In the morning, Scrapville was buzzing. Rumors spread like wildfire. Someone had seen a light beam shoot from Eddie's roof. Someone else claimed a glowing ball chased their dog. Someone else Eddie suspected it was Frank from the pawn shop posted online that Eddie was the father of a half-alien baby. The local paper ran a headline, "Plumber Prophet or Alien Pimp." Eddie buried his face in a pillow. And V, meanwhile, adjusted the satellite dish with military precision. "Soon," she whispered, "reinforcements will arrive. And this planet will be secured." In the corner, KR7 beeped. Eddie groaned. Somewhere deep down, he knew this wasn't just going to be a weird week. It was going to be a full-blown cosmic disaster. The satellite data didn't lie. Deep within NORAD, alarms pinged across 10 monitors as one of Earth's ancient orbital defense systems detected a Krylonian signature. The encryption was foreign. The pulses erratic. But it was unmistakable something out there was phoning home. General alerts were dispatched to black-budget divisions buried under layers of national secrecy. One of those landed in the hands of Colonel Thaddeus Ramsey. Ramsey had seen some things in his time. Crashed saucers in Peru. Plasma scorches in the sands of Nevada. That time in '92 when a farmer swore his cow got abducted and returned with higher IQ. He didn't laugh. He investigated. Now, something was lighting up his tracker again. And it all pointed to a speck on the map called Scrapville. "Scrapville," he growled, tapping the screen. "Who names a town like that?" The screen shifted to show a thermal feed. A glowing humanoid figure moving through the junkyard. Then a hovering orb beside her. Ramsey's eyes narrowed. "Deploy containment team. D-class matches. Full neural dampeners. And bring the drone scramblers. I want this threat neutralized before it goes viral." Hours later, the peaceful dusk of Scrapville was shattered. Eddie had just gotten used to the quiet again. V was in the kitchen, attempting to toast a Pop-Tart using her fingertip as a heat beam. He was almost proud of how normal it felt until the walls began to hum. Outside, boots hit the ground. Not regular boots, metal ones. Heavy. Robotic. A spotlight flared through his window. A voice boomed through a megaphone, "Citizen Edward Malone. Step out with your hands visible. This is a containment operation." Eddie peeked through the blinds. V. She was already standing beside him, eyes glowing faintly, armor phasing back into visibility. "They've come for us," she said simply. "Us? I didn't do anything." She stepped forward. "No. But you command me. Which makes you dangerous." Eddie groaned. "This is because you hacked my Roku, isn't it?" The front door exploded inward. A team of faceless operatives in black exosuits surged inside, plasma rifles raised. V reacted before Eddie could say a word. She moved like liquid fire, vaulting over the couch and slamming her palm into the floor. A pulse of blue energy rippled outward, shorting out 2 rifles instantly. Eddie dove behind the washing machine. The lead soldier aimed a neural dampener at her chest. "Stand down, entity. You are under arrest." V tilted her head. "You are unworthy of my attention." She raised her hand and unleashed a concentrated bolt of plasma that disarmed the dampener and sent the agent flying into the bookshelf. Cookbooks and wrenches rained down. KR7 zoomed in with a sarcastic beep. "Suggested action, total obliteration." Eddie peeked out. "Can we go with mild inconvenience instead?" One soldier lunged. V grabbed his arm, spun, and hurled him through the window. Another she dispatched with a flick of her wrist, his suit locking up mid-air. Then it was over. The squad lay groaning, unconscious or immobilized. Smoke curled from the plasma scoring on the walls. Eddie slowly emerged, eyes wide. "You just took down a Black Ops team." "In my living room." V brushed dust from her shoulder. "They were sloppy?" He walked to the fridge, opened it, took out a beer, stared at it, then put it back. This isn't happening, he muttered. I'm hallucinating. Mercury poisoning. That's it. It's the pipes. She tilted her head. Do you require neural cleansing? I can induce a trance. No, no trancing. No zapping. Just, why are you doing laundry? She turned to the pile of clothes in the corner. Your garments were contaminated. I have sanitized them using directed radiation. Eddie looked down at his now glowing t-shirt. Neon isn't really my style. Outside, sirens wailed in the distance. Reinforcements, V noted. Eddie rubbed his temples. Great. More men in black. I'll have to retile the floor again. As the first responder trucks screeched toward Scrapville, Colonel Ramsey watched through a surveillance drone. She's more dangerous than anticipated, he muttered. And the plumber might be the key? He tapped a command into his tablet. New orders flashed across the screen. Bring me Malone. Alive. Back in the house, V handed Eddie a folded shirt, his favorite, with a cartoon wrench giving a thumbs up. It survived the battle. He took it, still dazed. Thanks. I think. Then he looked at her. Really looked. For all the glowing armor and alien authority, there was something else there now. A gentleness. A focus. She wasn't just a conqueror anymore. She was trying. Maybe it was the adrenaline. Maybe it was the way she used plasma bolts like bug spray. But for the first time, Eddie didn't feel like she was just some crazy space lady. He felt like she was his crazy space lady. And that terrified him more than the robots. It happened on a Wednesday. Eddie wasn't sure why that mattered, but later, when everything had fallen apart, he'd always remember it was a Wednesday. Laundry day. The washing machine had been acting up again. After everything that had happened, Eddie found some bizarre comfort in trying to fix mundane appliances. So when it started smoking, he called out to V with a mix of exasperation and hope. She crouched beside the humming, rattling metal box, her fingers sparking with contained energy. Your device resists cleansing. That's because it's 70% rust and spiked, Eddie muttered. She placed her hand gently against the side panel. A small pulse of blue light flickered outward. Then a louder pulse. Then the washing machine detonated. It wasn't a huge explosion, but enough to blow the lid off and send Eddie stumbling back. V, however, remained motionless, her pupils dilated, her body stiff. She collapsed. Eddie panicked. V, come on, hey. Stay with me. KR-7 hovered over her. Neural cascade detected. Memory reactivation likely. Please do not interfere. Memory what? Her body twitched. Her armor flickered like a glitching projection. Then her eyes snapped open and something was different. She stood slowly, like someone waking from a nightmare. V. Eddie said carefully. Zelvaria, she whispered. I remember. What followed was a silence that stretched too long. She looked at him, and he could feel that something had shifted behind those golden eyes. The soft curiosity had vanished. In its place, calculation, weight, purpose. 12 worlds, she said. I led the purges of 12 worlds. Cities turned to ash. Oceans boiled. I watched populations vanish like smoke under my command. Eddie swallowed. That doesn't sound great. She turned away. Her voice was distant. I was the flame of the Krolonian order. A holy weapon forged for conquest. I dismantled civilizations. Tore apart alliances. I was unstoppable. He stepped forward. And now you're here. In my laundry room. Wearing a neon t-shirt and scaring my cat. She didn't laugh. She didn't move. My mission was Earth. A final conquest before ascending to empress status. Eddie let that sink in. So you were sent to invade us. Yes. But the crash. The amnesia. You. She looked at him now, truly looked. I misidentified you as planetary authority based on local frequency command. But, your kindness, your simplicity anchored me. It was not deception. It was peace. He exhaled. Are you saying I accidentally stopped an intergalactic war with my Wi-Fi? Her lips quirked, just barely. In part. He sat on the edge of the broken machine. So what now? You remember everything. What's the next step? Rejoin your empire? Finish the mission. She hesitated. Protocol demands the termination of native species non-compliant with submission. That's a very fancy way to say genocide. Yes. Eddie stared at the floor. He felt hollow. Confused. He thought of her laughing at cooking shows. Of the way she zapped his busted toilet like a sorceress. Of the weird peace she brought to his otherwise pathetic life. And now she stood in front of him, a war goddess with blood-soaked history and the power to end the world. He looked up. I don't care what you were. I care what you choose now. She stepped closer. You care about me? Even now? Yeah. That's the problem. I think I love you. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the explosion. She raised a hand. He flinched, but she just touched his chest, where his heart pounded wildly. You have a foolish heart, Eddie Malone. Tell me something I don't know. And yet, she said softly, that heart may be the only thing strong enough to defy destiny. KR-7 beeped. Warning. Long-range scanners detect Krolonian fleet en route. Estimated arrival, 72 hours. She closed her eyes. My people are coming. They will expect victory. They will expect Earth, broken and kneeling. Eddie stood. Then we'd better give them something else. She looked at him. And this time, she smiled for real. Then we fight. Not as conqueror and subject, but as equals. He grinned. I'll grab my wrench. Outside, the sky began to pulse with a faint shimmer of distant ships. War was coming. But so was love. And laundry. Eddie Malone was not a hero. He fixed leaks. He unclogged sinks. He spent most of his life trying to avoid attention, confrontation, and anything that looked remotely like responsibility. So naturally, 3 days before a full-scale alien invasion, he found himself standing in front of Scrappy's terrified townsfolk, holding a wrench like it was Excalibur. All right, he said, adjusting his tool belt, which now held an alien-enhanced power drill and something that looked suspiciously like a laser spatula. We're gonna fight back. Silence. Mrs. Dobbins raised a hand. With what, dear? Grit and sarcasm. No, Eddie said. With this? He hit a button. The garage door rolled up to reveal a table covered in makeshift weapons, chipped frying pans wired to plasma batteries, modified plungers that hummed ominously, and a set of chrome garden gnomes outfitted with laser eyes. The crowd stared. This is either brilliant, muttered Frank from the pawn shop, or the final sign of the apocalypse. Zelvaria no longer hiding behind her V-persona, but not quite the empress she once was, stood beside Eddie, watching quietly. She hadn't told them who she truly was. Not yet. Just that she was helping defend Earth. That was enough. For now. She stepped forward. The Krolonian fleet will not hesitate. Their ships can level cities. Their warriors do not fear pain. You cannot match them with strength. You must overwhelm them with unpredictability. Eddie nodded. Which is why we're turning this town into a death trap made of duct tape and spite. He divided the town into squads. Team 1 was the utility assault unit, retired plumbers and mechanics armed with wrenches modified to discharge plasma shocks. Team 2 were the Sky Watchers, using old CB radios and alien tech to create radar interference. Team 3, well, they were mostly teenagers who called themselves the Frying Pan Fighters. They took the name very seriously. Zelvaria trained them. She taught them how to move, how to disrupt power armor, how to strike and vanish. She was patient, focused, and terrifyingly efficient. But the biggest change was subtle. She stopped calling him Supreme Omega. Stopped saying my liege. She called him Eddie. Just Eddie. The first time it happened, he nearly dropped his plasma wrench. "You okay?" she asked afterward, in a rare moment of calm. "You called me Eddie? It is your name." "Yeah, but you never used it before?" She tilted her head. "Names are not given lightly in my culture. To speak one's true name is to offer recognition, respect." He smiled. "Well, in my culture, it means you stop thinking I'm a god king plumber. So that's progress." KR-7 floated past, dragging a crate full of electrified spatulas. Morale levels, stable. Tactical readiness, suboptimal. Breakfast utensil count, excessive. At night, Eddie couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the last few days. The alien soldiers. The glowing ships on the edge of orbit. The woman who crash-landed into his life, called him a king, and then chose him over an empire. He stared up at the stars. Somewhere out there, death was coming. But inside, in his little town, people were laughing. Training. Welding. Reinforcing storm drains with reinforced toilet lids. They were alive. And they were ready. Sort of. On the eve of invasion, Eddie stood in the center of town. Scrapville had become a war camp disguised as a trailer park. Neon wires hummed from power poles. Booby traps lined the perimeter. Lawn gnomes blinked with deadly intent. Zelvaria stood beside him, fully armored now. Her gaze fixed skyward. "They'll arrive by morning," she said. "Do we have a chance?" he asked. She turned to him. "No. But we have a choice. And that is more powerful than chance." He offered her a wrench. She took it. "Let's give them hell." High above, the Krolonian fleet entered Earth's atmosphere. And Scrapville braced for war. Dawn broke with fire. The first Krolonian ships tore through the sky like arrows dipped in starlight, cutting the clouds apart with thunderous roars. Scrapville shook as landing crafts descended into the outskirts, scorching patches of grass and melting decorative flamingos. At the same time, Earth's military forces rolled in from the west, tanks, drones, exosuited troops, all converging on the town marked by interstellar anomalies. Two worlds collided over a trailer park fortified with duct tape and stubbornness. From his rooftop perch, Eddie Malone watched the chaos unfold. "Here they come," he muttered. Then into his radio, "Activate Operation Flaming Wrench." A dozen garden gnomes lit up with synchronized pulses. The first wave of Krolonian scouts landed right in their blast radius. There was a pop of plasma, a shimmer of static, and 3 aliens went flying into a hedge trimmed like a dinosaur. "That's a hit," Frank yelled from the tool shed command center. Zelvaria stood at the town's eastern gate, armor flaring like a second sun. She moved with calculated grace, hurling energy bolts that bent midair to strike moving targets. Around her, the townsfolk fought with everything they had, some with plunger sabers, some with frying pans that vibrated at destabilizing frequencies. Mrs. Dobbins swung a mop with lethal elegance. A teenager with a modified leaf blower knocked a Krolonian drone out of the sky. It was working. Until it wasn't. A heavy shockwave hit near Eddie's position. A Krolonian commander twice the size of the others had landed. It slammed a pulse cannon into the pavement and roared, sending shockwaves in every direction. Eddie tried to get down, but the blast hit the building. Wood cracked. Shingles flew. He fell. Pain. Heat. Then darkness. When he opened his eyes, he was on the ground. Blood on his forehead. A sharp pain in his ribs. He could barely sit up. "Eddie." Zelvaria's voice broke through the noise. She blurred into view, blasting 2 attackers aside. She knelt beside him. "Stay with me." He coughed. You look amazing. Is that new armor? You're bleeding. Yeah, well, heroic falls don't come with airbags. She looked back at the battlefield. More ships were landing. The tide was shifting. Earth's military forces, confused by both sides, were withdrawing to perimeter zones, unable to tell friend from foe. KR-7 hovered over them. Eddie Malone's vitals are unstable. Recommend medevac or mercy detonation. Ignore him, Eddie rasped. Zelvaria's face was unreadable. In her mind, a dozen scenarios played out. She could activate the beacon. The full fleet would come. She could lead them. Finish the mission. Earth would fall, and her people would rise. Or... She looked at Eddie. At the blood on his shirt. At the wrench still gripped in his hand. He wasn't powerful. He wasn't strategic. He wasn't important in any galactic sense. But he was hers. She reached for the embedded shard in her gauntlet, a sliver of the original command matrix. A final fail-safe. Directive override, she whispered. KR-7 flinched. You are about to sever link with Krolonian command. This action is irreversible. I know. She pressed the shard into the ground. A deep pulse echoed outward, inaudible to human ears, but deafening to Krolonian sensors. Across the sky, the fleet's formations paused. Confused. Then one by one, they began to pull away. Retreating. The ground quieted. The drones collapsed. The ships veered off. On Earth's COMM channels, the generals had no idea what had just happened. But whatever it was, it ended the battle. In Scrapville, silence settled. The townspeople emerged from smoke and debris, blinking at the sudden stillness. Mrs. Dobbins poked a drone with her broom. Is it over? Frank raised his spatula. We won. Zelvaria stood, lifting Eddie in her arms. He smiled weakly. So, we good. We're good. She carried him past the smoking ruins, through the battered lawn ornaments, past the crater where the Gnome Command Center once stood. And high above them, the stars were silent again. Peace, fragile and absurd, had returned to Earth for now. The official reports listed her as deceased. Krolonian commander eliminated in crossfire, read one memo. No trace of alien signal remains, read another. Earth's top agencies closed their cases. The military dismantled its temporary field base. Scrapville was quietly wiped from any official narrative, filed away under anomalies and natural disasters. But in reality, Zelvaria lived. She staged her death perfectly, leaving behind fragments of armor and a plasma-burnt crater for investigators to find. Then she vanished alongside a recovering Eddie Malone into the heart of nowhere. A month later, a new business opened just off Route 9, between a gas station and a taco truck, wrench and rescue, multiversal plumbing and emergency planetary defense. It had a catchy jingle, a glowing sign, and a 5-star rating on every platform that mattered, including 2 alien ones. Inside, Zelvaria, now going by Val, wore flannel, denim, and an apron that said "Kiss the Cook, not the Conqueror." She was surprisingly good at pancakes. Eddie limped around the shop with a brace on one knee and a plasma screwdriver in his belt. They worked side by side, fixing leaks, rerouting quantum pipes, disarming occasional space mines that fell through dimensional cracks. Customers came from all over. Some were human. Some weren't. No one asked too many questions. One afternoon, Mrs. Dobbins stopped by with a broken kettle and a batch of muffins. So, she said, looking between the two of them. You two an item, or is it still a cosmic misunderstanding? Val looked up from calibrating the toaster. He's mine. Eddie choked on his coffee. Later that evening, as the sun dipped behind the scrapyard horizon, Eddie sat on the porch, watching Val teach KR-7 how to fold laundry. That one's a towel, not a battle flag, she corrected gently. KR-7 beeped. But its absorbency is heroic. Eddie smiled. The world had almost ended. He'd nearly died. And now he was watching a war drone argue about fabric softener. Life was weird. But it was theirs. He stood and walked over to her, wrapping an arm around her waist. "You miss it?" he asked. "The empire, the glory, the planets on fire?" She was quiet for a moment. Then, "No, I found something better." He raised an eyebrow. "Pancakes." "You?" "This?" "Us." They stood in silence, the kind that didn't need words. Above them, the stars remained silent. The fleet never returned. The war had ended with a wrench, a heartbeat, and a choice. And if anyone ever asked about the alien queen who once tried to conquer Earth, the locals just smiled and pointed toward the glowing sign beside Route 9. Wrench and rescue. Open 24/7. No questions asked. She came to destroy the Earth. But the Earth fixed her heart with a wrench.